So the story is about the rise of David Rowland, the son of a scrap metal dealer from South London who rose to become the confidant to Prince Andrew.
He'd acquired this Luxembourg bank, Kaupfing Bank, and they proceeded to turn Kaupfing, Luxembourg, into what they now called Bank Haveland. Prince Andrew had become some kind of a roving ambassador for the Rowlands.
You know, with their unofficial door opener, Prince Andrew, they kind of went around the world hoovering up clients from among the ranks of the world's sort of worst kleptocrats and criminals. I don't think anyone comes out well out of this tale. Prince Andrew certainly does not come out well.
You have the Queen's favourite son going out and basically being a glorified salesman for this really quite dodgy bank. We thought it'd be absolutely fascinating to start having a better, more in-depth look at what is Bank Haveland, who are the Rowlands, and what is their relationship with Prince Andrew.
So David Rowland had very humble beginnings. He left school at 16. He's a short guy, barrel-chested. He's got a kind of near-permanent scowl on his face. He peppers his speech with foul expletives. He's a rough character who's done very well for himself. By the 1990s, he was well off enough to set up a family office. And this family office was not just handling his own money, it was almost like a shadow banking operation.
They would provide finance loans to the types of people who couldn't otherwise get it, but that were very wealthy. Not many people in the UK would have heard of him until probably about late 2010s, around that sort of time, when a lot of these stories started coming about his friendship with Prince Andrew. So Prince Andrew is the second son of the Queen of England, and he is, by some reports, her favourite son. He's never been in any danger of being any particularly close to becoming king or anything like that. You know, obviously his older brother Charles is going to be king. You know, he didn't go to university, he went straight into the Navy. He then became a pilot and by all accounts served very bravely in the Falklands War as a helicopter pilot.
That's my helicopter flying over at the moment. I should go. I think it's almost time I should go, but never mind. Somebody's telling me it's time to go.
But after that, once he left the Royal Navy in the 80s, he seemed to have become a bit of a lost soul. He became a kind of magnet for somewhat disreputable people. Quite how Prince Andrew and David Rowland got into a similar orbit is not entirely clear. All we do know is that they did.
We know that they've been friends since at least 2005. One of the earliest photographs we have of the two of them together is Andrew unveiling a larger-than-life size statue of David Rowland on his Guernsey estate. And they are an odd pair. Obviously, David Rowland is a sort of working-class boy done good, whereas Andrew is a prince of the realm who, you know, was born into fabulous wealth and, you know, raised in palaces and castles.
As we go on air, there are crisis talks about how to stabilise the banking system.
What started in America last year has now spread to every part of the world.
We're down 9%. What you had was in 2008, 2009, you had this banking crash. And if you had some money and you were pretty sort of risk tolerant, there was an amazing opportunity there. And the Rowlands seized it. They absolutely seized this opportunity. Kaupfing had been one of the big victims of the financial crisis. It was this Icelandic bank that went off on this massive lending spree, and it all came to a juddering halt in 2008.
About 30,000 shareholders were in Kaupfing when the bank collapsed.
David Rowland came in and he bought the Luxembourg arm of Kaupfing Bank.
They were somewhat desperate to find a buyer. The best buyer before the Rowlands turned up was the Libyan Sovereign Wealth Fund. So there weren't a lot of takers for Bank Haveland. So that's why David Rowland managed to get it so cheap.
And they started to proceed to turn what the renamed now Bank Haveland into this private banking business based in Luxembourg, and going after the world's wealthy, as private banks do. Private banks are there to serve the interests, the wealth of wealthy people. But it had a slightly different business model to most of them. So we find them going off on this amazing worldwide jaunt to basically bank the world's dodgiest people. You know, we're talking dictators, we're talking scammers. You know, if you had dodgy money, the Rowlands were seemingly interested in you. And there didn't really seem to be any limits to who they'd go after. So, for instance, you'd see them go for the leadership of Azerbaijan, which is one of the world's most corrupt countries on earth.
The Rowlands flew to Azerbaijan with Prince Andrew on their private jet a number of times to meet with President Aliyev and his family.
Prince Andrew at the time was a trade ambassador for the UK, so he had tried to carve out this role for himself, and the government had carved out this role for him as a special trade envoy for the UK. Ostensibly, he was an ambassador for British business. And with his royal title, doors could be open for him that wouldn't be open to ordinary mortals. And the Rowlands looked to effectively use this relationship, this special place that Prince Andrew had, to basically get to people that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to. You know, remember, Bank Haveland is a tiny, tiny institution. You're only talking probably about $1 billion or so of assets. So if you have this small business and you want to get into or close to people with lots of money, you need a special in. And it seemed like their special in was Prince Andrew.
They quickly build up a relationship with Aliyev's family. You might not think that there's anything wrong with dealing with presidents of countries, but at the time that the Rowlands were visiting with Aliyev, he had already been accused by human rights groups of torturing opposition politicians, of jailing journalists, of changing the constitution to make him president for life. Leaked US diplomatic cables described him as a mafia hood who ran Azerbaijan in a manner of sort of feudalism in Europe in the Middle Ages. Both sides of the Atlantic in recent years, there's been a big crackdown on money laundering, and that has made most banks incredibly wary of who they take on as clients. But the Rowlands were a bit different. You know, with their unofficial door opener, Prince Andrew, they kind of went around the world hoovering up clients from among the ranks of the world's sort of worst kleptocrats. A sort of prize example of that is Kola Aluko. He was a Nigerian oil magnate who came to the Rowlands in 2015 to get a 25 million euro loan. Now, if the Rowlands had done a Google search on him at the time, they would have discovered that he was already under investigation in Nigeria for his part in a massive, massive fraud there involving bribery and corruption and the awarding of oil contracts. But they loaned him 25 million euros. And sure enough, within days of that loan being signed, the former Nigerian oil minister was arrested for her part in the fraud, and the police started looking for Kola Aluko. Arguably, the pinnacle of David Rowland's social climb was the 2018 wedding of Prince Andrew's daughter, Eugenie.
Here you have a granddaughter of the Queen marrying on national television at St George's Chapel, which is the same place where Prince Harry and Meghan Markle got married, and you have all of the great and the good of the country are going in there to be seated, to witness this occasion.
To join together this man and this woman.
You know, he had front row seats with his wife. They were in the aisle, sitting next to Kate Moss.
And there you have David Rowland.
In less than 6 decades, David Rowland had ascended from being the son of a scrap metal dealer to rubbing shoulders with royalty. But already at that time, the legal noose was tightening around his bank. Kola Aluko had defaulted on the €25 million loan that he owed to Bank Havelland, and that had led to the biggest foreclosure in New York history on this condo that he owned. And it became tabloid fodder, and for the first time Bank Havelland were linked to this central figure in one of Nigeria's biggest ever frauds. And that caught the attention of the Luxembourg regulators back home, who took a look at Bank Havelland's dealings with Aluko and really didn't like what they found. When they took a deeper look into Bank Havelland's clients, they found that they were also banking the daughters of President Aliyev and other prominent Azerbaijanis. And they found that they'd done so with very little due diligence in terms of background checks into the source of their wealth. It isn't much fun being Prince Andrew these days. Ever since photographs emerged of him with his arm around the waist of a young girl in the entourage of Jeffrey Epstein, he has been somewhat toxic. These days he seldom leaves the confines of Windsor Park, where he lives in a nice big house. So the bank's old buccaneering ways are very much behind it.
And what you have is this agreement between the two sides that Bank Havelland will lower its risk appetite. The problem you then have, obviously, is that, well, if you're just a normal private bank trying to go after the same people everyone else is, why would you bank at Bank Havelland, right? Why wouldn't you go to some other bigger place that has more services? And the simple answer to that is you would go to one of those places, most likely, in which case Bank Havelland really doesn't have a purpose any longer.